the Kodiak Island Borough, they've adopted the Roberts Rules of Procedure as the procedure for running meetings. So why is it important to use a parliamentary procedures? It is important because it allows everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. So, which rules apply? So I suggest that you check your bylaws, but as far as I know, like all the boards and committees of the Assembly and the service area boards, they use the Roberts Rules, okay? Those rules are adopted or incorporated in the Borough Code. Okay. General meeting procedures. Each member has the right to participate and share in the discussion. No member may monopolize the discussion. The member who made the motion has the right to speak first. And always address your remarks through the chair. So for the Assembly, the rules for debate is that when you have a motion on the floor, is that each Assembly member is entitled for 10 minutes in the discussion, the first go around. And after that, after the first go around, it's another 10 minutes. So for each item on the agenda, technically, an Assembly member has 20 minutes for each discussion. That could make meetings really, really long if they use the 10 minutes each for each go-around. So the tool to limit that, though, is that there's a parliamentary motion that you can use, which is move to limit debate. And you can shorten the debate. So there's exemptions to small boards, though. I would say, for the 3-member boards, we have a service area board, and there's only 3 members there. These procedures, the other procedures that I'm talking about do not pertain to small boards. There's an exemption. So exemptions for small boards, members are not required to obtain the floor. Motions need not to be seconded. No limit on these debates. Informal discussion is allowed. The presiding officer may debate without passing the gavel. Okay. So is it, yes?
Is there some number there, what constitutes a small board versus?
As far as I know, it's less than 7. But I can double check on that and send you an email just to make sure. What is the prerequisite for a successful meeting? You need to have an agenda. I've heard someone, one of the trainers before, that said, if you don't have an agenda, don't meet. It's not needed if you don't have an agenda. You will be wasting your time. The trainer said that if you don't have an agenda, you don't need to be there. An agenda is also sometimes called the order of business. So an agenda is a time-saving tool, and your group must have the discipline to stick to it, and you will see it pay off. So let's look at a sample agenda. So you're familiar with this. Call to order, you would have the chair usually call to order the meeting. And then the roll call. I put an asterisk at the end of the roll call because I would like to remind everyone our codes for the Assembly and the boards and committees, they said that it says that the chair shall cause the record to reflect the absence of the member. So it is important that if someone is absent and you would like to excuse that person and you don't want that absence to reflect in the accounting of the absences for that person at the end of the accounting period, because you're probably going to need to vacate that seat if you don't excuse a member during a meeting. So it is important that you either do that or state for the record that that person is not excused.
Would the chair have to make a motion to excuse, or is it just a statement?
So if the members could make that motion, move to excuse a board member so-and-so, And it doesn't need to be the chair. But if there's no motion on the floor, then the chair could just say there's no excusal for board member so-and-so who is absent. Okay. We'll move on to motions. Know your motions. So there are different kinds of motions. You have main motions, you have subsidiary motions, you have privilege motions, incidental motions, and motions that bring a question back before the assembly, board, or committee. So we'll talk about main motions. What are main motions? The main motions, they are the motions that introduces a subject for consideration. It seeks to accomplish some concrete objective. It allows a member to ask the body to vote in favor of doing some specific item of business on the agenda. Okay. So an example would be if you want to introduce a subject, you make a motion, I move to, or I move that. Okay. So debate. If there's no motion on the floor, can you debate? Can you start discussion? You're not supposed to. You can start discussion once the motion is made and seconded. What if there's no second, but someone started talking about the item? It assumes a second. So let's say someone made a motion to purchase a computer and there's no second, but someone says, oh, we should buy a Dell computer. That will assume a second, and then you can start discussing. So always address the chair when you want to make your comments, and you have to wait to be recognized. You speak within the allotted time, just like I mentioned earlier, 10 minutes for the assembly, the first go-around. And once you've voted on the motion, you accept the will of the majority. Okay? Do not interrupt except to raise point of order. And then do not attack motives or personalities. And all remarks must be germane to what's on the floor. Okay? We're moving now, we're done with main motion, we're moving to subsidiary motions. What are subsidiary motions? This must be dealt before the main motion can be voted on, may be applied to a main motion. So you can modify a motion, you can amend a motion, you can delay action on it, you can dispose of it, you can refer it to a committee. Okay? So if you want to reject a main motion, what do? You can postpone it indefinitely. Okay? If you want to change a motion, you can move to amend by inserting or adding words. You can strike out words or paragraphs. You can strike out and insert words or substitute a paragraph. The assembly, we also sometimes use versioning, where we can have a version 1 and substitute a version 2 to the version that's existing. But we want to make sure that when we do that, we have the different versions available to the public. Okay? If you want to send a pending question to a small group or further study or recommendation, you can commit or refer. You can say, I move to refer this to, I know that SWAB committee formed a subcommittee. So what they did is that instead of dealing with it, they were not ready, what they did is that they referred it to the subcommittee for further study. And then they gave direction for the subcommittee to bring it back once they're done with their once they have a recommendation. So if you want to delay an action or a decision until later in the same or the next meeting, you can postpone to a certain time. So let's say, for example, you're not ready to deal with a subject or an item on the agenda. You think that you're going to need your attorney to review something, and it will take about 2 weeks for the attorney to get back to you. You may just say, I move to postpone this 3 weeks from today until we hear back from our attorney. Okay, So if you postpone indefinitely, that tends to kill the motion, okay? If you think the discussion is going over time, you may limit the time of the debate. Let's say, for example, you've been talking about an item for 30 minutes already, and it's, everyone's just bringing the same thing over and over again. What you can do is that you can limit the debate, and you can state a motion, example, move to limit the debate on this item for 5 more minutes. If you think that an item needs more discussion, what you can do is that you can extend the time also. So you can limit it or you can extend it. So let's talk about previous question. Have you attended meetings and someone all of a sudden says, question, and everything stops and they do roll call? Is that right? So question, let's talk about previous question. Please don't say question and then expect that everything stops and that you take a roll call vote on the item. That's not proper. That's not the proper use for that motion. So it is not in order to state question when someone is talking. Okay? When you say question, the proper motion is I move to previous the question, which means I move that we stop the discussion. It requires a second, okay? And also, it's not debatable. You can't debate it. And also, because you're taking away rights from the membership, you need 2/3 vote, not just a majority. You need more. So let's say you have a 7-member board, then you're going to need 5 voting yes on it, not just the 4, because you're taking away rights from the membership. You're saying, I'm closing the discussion.
Is that just of the members present or of what constitutes, say you have 5 board members and you have a 7-person board, you got to get all 5 of them correct?
What I understand is that those that are present at that meeting.
Those that are present.
Yeah.
No vote?
Yes.
When you talked about what I think most people refer to as calling the question, does that issue require a vote before the main motion or that? So there's 2 votes then?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So, because it's not a monopoly, someone can technically use this if it's not a 2-step. Someone can say question and then it's done. So you need to have a motion on the floor and someone needs to second it, and then you take the 2/3 vote. And then once it passes, then you can do the roll call vote or the vote on the item. Okay. So there's 2 different motions there. Okay.
I just want to clarify from the previous question, if you will. If there are 4 assembly members present in a quorum, but to pass it, you need all 4 votes, not just 3 votes, you need all 4. So if you are calling for question, and you need 5 votes, it wouldn't just be the members there, it would be, if there were 5 assembly members there, and someone called for question, they would all have to agree to stop debate, is that correct?
2/3 vote of, I think the assembly's rules says 2/3 vote of the entire assembly. So we need to check, that's why it's important to always look at your bylaws, because each individual board has different bylaws. So you have different rules, like Planning and Zoning Commission, you have your own rules, aside from abiding by the Roberts rules. But what I understand with the assembly is the vote of the entire assembly. So the assembly is 5. Okay. So the motion to previous question or call the question immediately stops the debate and amendments, and then it immediately moves on to the main motion or whatever the motion is on the floor. So if you want to set aside the pending question temporarily, I say temporarily, is that you can lay it on the table. Let's say you're having a meeting and all of a sudden a dignitary came in, or maybe Senator Stevens came in and said, I would like to address the assembly or give a report to the assembly, and you have a pending motion on the floor, what you can do is you can make a motion to lay it on the table. So what that means is that you're suspending the discussion temporarily until you hear this report, and then you can pick it from the table at a later time. Is this clear? Okay, so good. So laying on the table, please do not use it as killing an item. What I've experienced in the past is that others try to use laying on the table as a motion that is similar to postpone indefinitely. When they try to kill something, they try to put it on the table, which is not correct. Because when you lay it on the table, you need to pick it up from the table at a later time. Okay, so we're done with 2 right now. So now we're moving on to privilege motions. What are privilege motions? Privilege motions, they deal with matters of immediate and overriding importance. They do not relate to the pending matter. They do not relate to the motion that may be on the floor. They address addresses matters that affect comfort and safety. Example, you want to recess a meeting, you want to adjourn it, you want a question of privilege, you want to call the orders of the day. So let's say, for example, you want to take a short break in the meeting, you can move to recess the meeting, or when you want to close the meeting, you move to adjourn the meeting. So once again, check your bylaws, your groups, your board or committee's bylaws. Let's say for the assembly, you cannot take a recess for more than 20 minutes. It's in the code. You can also take a recess when there's a pending question on the floor for the assembly. So when they have, let's say, move to adopt ordinance such and such, and they started debate, and then the debate is getting to be really, really long, and they want to go to the restroom, they technically should not be recessing when there's a motion on the floor. They need to finish that up, vote on it, then they can take a recess. So check your bylaws. So for the assembly, also there's a rule that their meetings can't go beyond 10:30 p.m. Okay?
When did that start?
It's in the code. It was changed. It used to be 11:30 p.m.
Yes.
And then it was when we changed the meetings from 7:30 to 6:30, then we adjusted the 11:30 to 10:30. Okay? So no meeting shall be extended beyond midnight either, unless extended by 2/3 vote of the assembly. So to set a time, what if, let's say, for example, you tried really hard and you really can't finish the business for that day? What can you do? You can either postpone it, correct? Or if you want to convene the next day, you can fix the time to adjourn. And what that does is that technically it doesn't adjourn the current meeting, although it sounds like it is doing that. But what it does is that it sets up a time and sometimes the place for the continuation of the present meeting. And sometimes this is necessary, and it is also okay because technically you don't need to, what you're saying is that we're just continuing on with this meeting tomorrow, and then you don't need to do advertising on the paper, which could delay calling another meeting, right? Because it takes approximately three days to put something on the paper. So you can just fix the time to adjourn to maybe tomorrow. Yes, Megan?
Bill, could you please give us an example of what a motion like that would sound like if we needed to continue this meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock?
So I would move, a good motion would be fix the time to, I move to fix the time to adjourn this meeting until tomorrow at 3:00 PM in the Assembly chambers. It needs to be seconded, and then you need a roll call vote on it. So technically, you're informing the public that are interested in your discussion that you're going to continue on with the meeting tomorrow. I think Women's Bay has done this before. Just a month ago, I think that's what they've done. So it's not often used, but I just want to share it with you in case you need to use it. So incidental motions, moving on to incidental motions. These are motions that relate to the pending business. They must be decided immediately before business can proceed. They are applicable only in its own type of special circumstance. So let's say I move to suspend the rules. I raise a point of order. I move that the motion be divided. Example, at the last meeting of the Assembly, we moved the oath of office for newly elected officials at the beginning of the meeting. Usually, those are done under other items at the end of the meeting. So, because the mayor wanted, in case there's family members of the newly elected who would like to attend the meeting, then at least we can give the oath at the beginning of the meeting. However, you can't give an oath to a newly elected official until the resolution certifying the election is adopted, right? And resolution comes later on the agenda. So what we've done is that we suspended the rules and said, we're moving the resolution before giving the oath of office under the presentation. So we were able to do that. We adopted the resolution, and then we gave the oath of office to the newly elected officials. So that's what suspending the rules is. So you have your order of business, right? So when it's necessary that you have to move items, you can use this motion.
So then at that point, if you moved the point and such, and you've sworn in the new member, does the old member need, if there are any, you don't change the chairs at that time?
No, because our code says that the newly elected officials do not take office until Monday after the certification of the election. So, any question on suspending the rules? Okay, point of order. Who can call a point of order? The governing body can call a point of order. The mayors or the presiding officers can call a point of order. The clerks and the secretaries to the different boards cannot call the point of order. So when the assembly or someone is getting out of line, I technically, as the clerk, can't do anything about it. I can't call a point of order. I'm going to depend on my mayor and my assembly members to that they have to watch each other, and then they raise the point of order, not the clerk. Sometimes what I do is I ask a point of clarification. That's what I do. And just try to bring it back to what is on the floor. So if something inappropriate happens at a meeting, such as name calling, during a heated debate, or someone is in violation of the bylaws, then someone can call a point of order. The chair can also call a point of order or gives justification or reason for the call. So if the chair fails to call a point of order, then any member of your board can, or the assembly members can. You can also appeal the decision of the chair. So the final decision on the point of order falls back on the membership then, if you appeal the decision of the chair. So let's look at the point of order script. So let's say an assembly member says point of order, then the chair should say, Because sometimes someone would just say point of order and you don't know what kind of point of order they're calling. So it's the responsibility then of the chair to say what's the point of order or state your point of order. Then the member who called point of order should be able to say what the violation is. So then the chair could say the point is well taken, and the reason that so-and-so is in violation of the rules, and this is my ruling. The chair should state what the ruling is. And then the chair could also say the point is not well taken. I don't think so-and-so is in violation of our rules.
So what happens when the chair calls a point of order?
Then if someone doesn't agree with the ruling of the chair, then there is what is called appeal the ruling of the chair. Then you're going to have another motion on the floor that says, I appeal the ruling of the chair because I don't agree that so-and-so is in violation. And then it goes back to the entire body to vote on.
If the chair calls a point of order and someone agrees, does there then require a vote?
The chair makes the decision, and it's final, unless it's appealed. Unless it's appealed. So the next slide, oh, go ahead.
When a person is wanting to call a point of order, is that something that you just holler out, point of order, is like, or do you have to want to raise your hand?
You would want to raise your hand. You always go through your chair, and you have to wait to be recognized. And then you address your point of order to the chair, and you state your reason for calling a point of order, and then the chair will make a decision. Okay. Next slide would be how we're going to look at a sample script. How am I doing on time? 4 o'clock. I have 30 minutes. So I appeal the decision of the chair. So it needs a second. It is moved and seconded. The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? So as you can see here, all motions need to be stated in the positive tone. It's not the other way around, where should we reverse the decision of the chair? It should be, should we sustain? Okay. So then you can debate it, and it's a majority vote to sustain the decision of the chair. Okay. The chair has the opportunity to explain the decision being appealed. Member may speak once, not twice. So it's different here. You can't keep debating it. And at the end, the chair is allowed to explain. Okay. Next slide, we talked about once you lay an item on the table, you need to pick it up from the table. You need to take it from the table. Okay. Any question on that? Taking an item from the table, putting it on the table, laying it on the table. Okay, next slide. If you vote on the prevailing side on the item, you can do a motion to reconsider. So life changes, we change our minds, right? And then sometimes new things, new information come in, and then you want to, this is when you use the restorative motions, where you can reconsider the vote, you can rescind, you can also amend something previously adopted. So rescind is to cancel what you've done, what the board has done. Reconsider is to erase the original vote, and then you put the motion back on the table. Okay? You can also amend something previously adopted. Let's say you adopted the resolution, you can always put it back on the agenda and then amend it. Any questions?
Is that only at the current meeting or previous meeting?
You can, so with the assembly, you can reconsider during the meeting, and it requires 5 votes. So it's a 2/3 vote. If they reconsider the next day, file a motion to reconsider, then we put it on the agenda, and it only requires 4 votes. Okay.
So
So you have to do it right there in the meeting, like you can't, you don't have 48 hours to, okay, right then.
You have to check your bylaws, but with the assembly, they can do it at the meeting. And then they also have the ability to do it the next day, file a motion to reconsider with the clerk up to 5 p.m. So it's always good to check your rules. So if you're not sure, if you want to make sure that you're able to reconsider, do it during the meeting. So you don't miss on the opportunity to do that. Next slide would be bring back restorative motions. These are the motions that allow the group to change its mind. We've talked about it a little bit. So far we've talked about all the different types of motions. We've talked about main motions, the subsidiary motions, or what are called secondary motions. We've talked about privilege motions, bring back motions, incidental motions. So let's look about, on the next slide would talk about handling a motion. How do you handle a motion? First, as I mentioned earlier, you have to obtain the floor. Member rises and addresses the chair. You have to wait for the recognition of the chair. The chair would recognize the member. They can call the member by name, or they can nod to the member. Okay? Bringing the motion before the assembly, you need to say, I move to, or you say, I resolve that we should be doing this. Avoid saying, calling out, so moved. I've heard this a lot, so moved. All of a sudden you're having discussion and someone says, so moved. So this is a common statement which means nothing, really. So one must state the actual motion so as to avoid confusion in the members and the audience. So you'll have audience members, and then all of a sudden a member would say, so moved. And I was like, what did they move on? You know, so everyone has the right to know exactly what is being moved or what is being discussed. So moved is vague and pointless. So secretaries, clerks, you know, when someone does that on the assembly, I usually stop and just say, would you please restate the motion? So that everyone is on the same page. You're not buying a red car when others are thinking that you're buying a blue car. So, and the motion needs to be seconded, and then the chair states the question. So, you know, it depends on how formal you'd want to get. But most, in our training, when someone makes a motion and seconds it, the chair would restate it. Now we have resolutions such and such on the floor, and it is ready for discussion type of thing. So considering the motion, then the members can debate the motion. Before speaking, you obtain the floor from the chair. Maker of the motion has the right to speak first. All remarks must be addressed to the chair. The chair could use the round-robin method of discussion. The maker of the motion has the right to speak first. I've said that. Get the full picture of everyone's views for effective decision. The chair puts the question to a vote. The chair can say, are you ready for the question? If no one rises to claim the floor, the chair proceeds to take the vote. The chair says the motion is to adopt such and such. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Or sometimes it's a roll call vote. So please check your code, check your rules. KIB code requires the chair or the clerk ask if anyone wishes to change their vote. Okay, so the code requires me to ask that question so that someone can, if they want to, change their vote to the prevailing side so that they don't lose the opportunity to make the motion move to reconsider. Because the move to reconsider requires that you have voted on the prevailing side. So if I don't give you that opportunity to change your vote, then someone can say the clerk did not ask for a change of vote, so I lost my opportunity to reconsider my vote. So that's very important. That's why when you're listening to assembly meetings, you'll hear me at the end of roll call I always ask the assembly if they wish, or assembly members if they wish to change their vote. Okay. The chair announces the result of the vote. She could say the resolution number such and such passes with 4 votes. Or she could also say the ayes have it, the motion is adopted, and the treasurer will issue the check. Or it could be the noes have it, the motion failed, and a check will not be written. Okay. A script of a motion, I move that we purchase a computer. Is there a second to the motion? This is eliminated, just like what I mentioned earlier. If someone automatically starts discussion, it assumes a second. Okay? It is moved and seconded that we purchase a computer. Is there a discussion? Then discussion occurs. Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? And then you can do voice vote, show of hands, or roll call vote, and then the chair announces the result of that vote. So how do you amend the motion? So our main motion was to purchase a computer, right? So now, how do you amend a motion? Then your primary amendment would be, I move to amend that we purchase a computer not to exceed $2,000. Because you don't want your secretary purchasing, if you have a $10,000 budget, and then all of a sudden she's purchasing an $8,000 computer. So you want to limit her spending ability, so you would make a primary amendment that would amend that motion to purchase a computer not to exceed $2,000. And then you allow discussion on the $2,000. That's your primary amendment. Then someone says, oops, I really like the brand Dell computer. I would like us to purchase a computer. I would like our secretary to purchase a computer from Dell. So what you're going to do then is that you're going to amend that main motion, the primary motion, and with the secondary motion that would state, I move to further amend the motion to purchase a computer not to exceed $2,000 from Dell. Then you need to move on the amendments individually, starting from the second amendment, purchasing it from Dell. If that passes, then you're purchasing it from Dell. And then you move to the primary amendment, which is not to exceed $2,000. And then your secretary would know that you're purchasing it not to exceed $2,000 from Dell. And then you move on the main motion, which is the entire thing. And if it passes, then the chair would announce the result. Is there such a thing as a friendly amendment? A friendly amendment. So you cannot have, I'm sorry to say that there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. It's an extremely wrong practice. If you want to make an amendment, it needs to be done properly. It needs to be on the floor so that everyone can debate it, and then it needs to be announced by the chair, and it's incorporated in the main motion. There's no such thing as friendly amendment because it confuses people. So you can have up to 3 motions on the floor. Having more than that is really confusing, and it's discouraged. But once you've adopted all those 2 amendments to the primary amendment, and once you're back to the primary amendment, you can do more. You can then say, okay, we're purchasing a computer that's to exceed $2,000 from Dell, and if you want to be specific on the color of the computer, then you can make more amendments then, that you want to purchase a black computer. Okay, and then,
So, I'm assuming, I don't see it there, but I'm assuming, okay, you make the main motion and somebody seconds it, and then you can do an amendment, right?
correct.
And then makes the amendment seconded, then a secondary amendment can be made, so, okay.
Yeah, but then a third amendment, then you need to go back and then just vote on the two that are already on the floor. And then once you're back on the main motion, then you can make another motion to amend. Okay. So we've discussed the exemptions for small boards, or the role of the chair. They determine who has the right to speak, they explain issues without bias, they maintain order and decorum. That's why it's important for the chair. Most of the time, they're the ones who call the point of order. And they need to keep the discussion on task. They refrain from debate unless there's a passing of the gavel, or unless your code allows for the chair to participate, and our code allows for the chair to participate in the discussion. It's in the code for the mayor to participate. States the motion clearly, take and announce the vote. Exemptions, we've talked about this already in an earlier slide. Fundamental principles, order, efficiency, quality, and balance. So you need to aim for those. Always solicit input from all the members. And quality, fully understand the issues, do your homework before you come to the meeting, read your packets. Take time also to hear from staff. And then efficiency, meeting participants deserve better than to have their time taken for granted. So keep comments brief and to the point, and maintain order by sticking to the agenda, prevent digressions. And that's all I have. Questions? General discussions, wrap up? Yes.
So in the committee that I'm in, we have a subcommittee that doesn't make any decisions. They just like go into more detail, like figuring out which one is best or whatever, and then they come back to the committee to discuss what they've learned. On that subcommittee, do they have to put out to the public, like, hey, we're having this meeting?
Yes. So even a subcommittee is a governing body as defined in the statutes, so they still need to advertise their meeting. You can't say, oh, they're a subcommittee of our group, so they don't need to fall under, don't need to follow Open Meetings Act. No, they do. They need to advertise their meetings. Is that your question?
Even if they're not making any decisions,
Correct.
they're taking a topic that we could spend hours on, and they're dissecting it and then bringing all that information back.
Correct. It's an advisory committee, and all advisory committees they have to follow Open Meetings Act. Yes, and the attorney will be,
It just takes so much time advertising when you're just discussing something, you just bring it back to discuss.
right, but the public members still have the right to know. So our attorney will be talking more about that later. Yeah, so he's going to be discussing that. Any other questions, Mark?
Adjournment, does adjournment require a vote?
It does require a vote, and it's so funny because I had an assembly member in the past that voted no. It still passed though, because, we had 4 that said yes, but it doesn't need to be a roll call though. It could just be a voice vote.
So even if everything on the agenda is complete and
Right.
the meeting is completed,
Yeah.
okay.
Move to adjourn, and then it could just be a voice vote. It doesn't need to be a roll call vote.
It's correct that it does not require a second. A motion to adjourn.
I believe it does. I believe it does, but if I'm wrong, I'm gonna double check on that, but I believe it does. Yes. Any other question? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so like you do the voice call vote, you do the roll call vote, like what differentiates,
sometimes, there are, the motions to adjourn usually are voice vote. You can always do a voice vote, but if you're unsure, as a chair, if you are unsure how many voted no or how many voted yes, you can always ask for a roll call vote just to clarify. If you don't hear unanimous, then you probably should go to a roll call vote then, just to make sure that you have the number of votes that are needed for a motion to carry.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I kind of got lost on changing the question on what would be something that would be out of line, like you're debating, let's say we're debating sandwiches during the recess time, and somebody wanted to ask what kind of sandwiches they were, would that be like something out of line?
During what you're gonna have, what kind of
Yeah, what kind of
sandwiches
sandwiches
you're
that-
gonna
yeah.
have during
Yeah, is
recess?
that like changing the debate question, or? Is that getting?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question. Would you please repeat the question?
I just didn't pick up on exactly what was out of order for something being debated. If you want to bring up something a little bit different, getting off topic a little bit, how far off topic is considered a question? Like the debate was sandwiches during recess time, but I wanted to find out what kind of sandwiches they were.
You can use the motion, you can raise a point of clarification.
Oh, okay.
You can just raise your hand and you can ask the chair person, I would like to raise a point of clarification. What kind of sandwiches are we getting for
Okay.
recess?
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Anything else that you would like me to expand on?
I wonder if there's a way to make this resource available to refer to at other times in the future?
It's actually broadcasted live on YouTube right now. I'm sorry that I didn't say that, but the camera is just pointed this way, so you're not being seen right now. But you can always go back to the Kodiak Island Borough YouTube channel and watch this video. Okay? So if there's newly appointed board members, I would encourage the staff members to please encourage the newly appointed to go back to this training. Yep. How am I doing on time? 9 minutes. Wow. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Please, our email is clerks@kodiak.ak.us. If you have any questions, parliamentary questions, please shoot us an email and we'll get back to you. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Our next training starts at 4:45.